And I am going to pull up the screen share. I thought I was, at least. All right, everybody give me a second. I've got to sign in. Somehow my, I had the textbook up and it's disappeared. Be right with you. We got to sign back into the publisher. It's slow this morning. Everybody still with me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Now I'm going to share the screen. Still not showing up. Ah, here it is. All right, does everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Cengage, MindTap, see that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, on this, it has rationalism and empiricism. That's what we were talking about the last time. This is 8.1, the very introduction to the chapter on Kant. Now, actually, rereading Poemen, he's better than I remember him in terms of his understanding of Kant. So this is trustworthy stuff. Let me do a little refresher. You know, we talked about epistemology and metaphysics, remember? At the very first part of the course. Now, rationalism and empiricism, we talked about last time what Kant had inherited from the history of philosophy. His teachers were rationalists. The English were the empiricists. He discovers empiricism through his teacher, who was a wide-ranging, very intellectual European professor. So he had never been acquainted with empiricism. He discovers Locke and Hume, and that's where we find him saying that Locke, or that Hume rather, awakened him from his dogmatic slumber. So rationalism and empiricism are answers to the question of how we know things. The rationalists said that we know things intuitively, that we are born with certain patterns and intuitions. The empiricists say, tosh on that, we are born with nothing. We have a blank slate. So that's rationalism and empiricism are two different answers to the question of how we know. How do we know the truth? So rationalism and empiricism are epistemology. Realism and idealism are the two opposing poles of metaphysics. Realism, Aristotle is a realist. Aristotle is what we call a naive realist, where he says the thing and the thought of the thing are simply the thing connected. So our mind is made for the world and the world is made for the mind. And so when we see the table, we think the table. And so reality is simply representation. The idealist, his teacher Plato was an idealist. The reality of something lies someplace else. In Plato, it was in the realm of forms, which are non-mental, non-physical, ultimate reality of things. Kant's been accused of being an idealist because he says that we do not know the thing in itself, which opposes Aristotle's opinion. Aristotle thought that we did know the thing in itself. So the realism and idealism then are metaphysical answers to what ultimate reality is and how it is constructed. So that's just to fill in that first page there that you're looking at. Let me make some notes here. Okay. All right, let's move on. Here's the discussion of Poema of rationalism and empiricism. And again, I think that that is pretty good, not a bad discussion. So pay some attention to that. Now let me say something that clearly that Poema doesn't say. Immanuel Kant forever changes the traditional debate between rationalism and empiricism and realism and idealism. He is neither a rationalist nor an empiricist. And he's not even in the middle. Neither is he a realist or an idealist. The German tradition in general has been known as idealism, and Kant's, the people that came after Kant, like Hegel and Schelling, were truly idealist. Thought makes the world. We see that debate even in current times where idealism has come back quite huge in terms of people sort of reinventing themselves, or our thoughts that people can reinvent themselves and become things that they simply are not. That's seated in German idealism, which goes all the way back to right after Immanuel Kant. Hegel was a generation after Kant during the time of Napoleon. Um, so he's 30, 40 years younger than Kant. So idealism becomes the predominant German philosophy. I used to think that it was the only philosophy. I've changed my mind, but it is basically a form of metaphysics. How was the world constructed? All right, going to 8.1b here, act and rule intuitionism. I may ask you to distinguish between act and rule intuitionism, but I don't put nearly as much emphasis on that as Poyman does. I think it's important to know, principally because Poyman thinks it's important to know, um, but it's not significant. Do take note of 8.1b here at the very beginning. Since the Middle Ages, one of the dominant versions of European moral philosophy was natural law theory. Our next excursion after Kant will be into, as we move toward the end of the class, will be into natural law and virtue ethics. Kant's ethics is a form of natural law, but it's important for everybody to understand that Kant, the reason he has Deon necessity as being his predominant theme, is that he considers morality. He thinks that morality is studied in the same way that mathematics and logic is studied. So Kant would distinguish between the focus of different kinds of law, say physical law and moral law, but both are as real as the other. So there are laws of ethics and there are natural laws as well. So he's a very special kind of a philosopher when it comes to natural law, and we'll go into that more deeply in the next excursion. Most of our understanding of natural law comes through Cicero and Luther. They were huge in the formation of both the German and the English conception of what natural law was. That's different than the Greek notion of natural law, and we'll talk about that later. But Kant is different than all of those. Again, more of that later. Okay, now here's the categorical imperative, my dear friends. The categorical imperative is imperative. Read this section carefully, all of it, and carefully know the difference between intrinsic goodness and extrinsic goodness. And keep in mind, as this title suggests, intrinsic goodness is intimately connected with the goodwill. And remember, we said last time or the time before that one of the famous Kant statements is there's nothing good but the goodwill. Please know, study hypothetical versus categorical imperatives, because there will be a question about that. I can guarantee. So read that section very carefully. this read, but don't drill down into it. There may be a question that comes out of here in some place. Now, keep in mind, when you go through the quiz, when the quiz comes to you, it's going to be in order. So I'm not going to be jumping around in this chapter. The question will go straight through from beginning to end. I won't ask you a question at the beginning that comes from the end. So you're just going to go straight through the chapter as you answer the questions. I'm not going to jump around. Keep that in mind. All right, the counterexamples to the principle of the law of nature. Yeah, read it. Don't get tied down with it. Again, counterexample 2. Counterexample 3. Counterexample 4. The reason I'm not asking you to focus on these topics is that this has always confused me. Not that I don't understand what he's saying, but I don't understand the reason for it. He's simply wrong about some of these, and I'll, I could go into that, but I'm not, because it's boring. But just take my word for it. He's a little. This has always bothered me about Poyman's book. Some of the stuff here is just illogical. Some of the claims that he makes, and that's what bugs me. But anyway, so that's the reason I'm not asking you to focus in on it. I don't know why this thing is so slow today. All right, 8.4, other formulations of the categorical imperative. This is important. 8.4 is important. Know the principle of ends. Know the principle of autonomy. We've talked about this before. I think this is probably the key to Kant's ethics here. Remember, I told you about one of my former professors, Robert Paul Wolff, who wrote a book in defense of anarchism, where he says that the absolute autonomy, in Immanuel Kant, the absolute autonomy of the individual can never be squared with the authority, with authority, the authority of the state or the authority of one person over another. In other words, we are simply human beings because of our autonomy. This is more important than just free will. For Kant, autonomy exists even if we did not possess free will. So in many ways, I hate to say it here, but he's a radical about this. I find him to be an extremely interesting radical. Every emphasis upon freedom that we can get is significant and important. And Kant is certainly the most articulate spokesman in all of history for individual freedom. As a matter of fact, he begins what is known as classic liberalism. Classic liberalism is something that you can adhere to despite whether you are conservative or what we term as a modern liberal. As a matter of fact, classic liberalism has nothing to do with either of them. Classic liberalism talks about the autonomous individual, the right of the individual to make decisions for herself. So pay attention to this. Think about this. This is the great gift of Kant to all of humanity and to all of thought, I think. He is the spokesperson for freedom. Okay. Come on. Here we go. This is Sir David Ross. I mentioned him I mentioned him the last time, I think. He's a 20th century English philosopher. He really goes back to Pufendorf, which is one of Kant's teachers, not the most significant one, but one of Kant's teachers. He kind of goes back to Pufendorf. So he picks up some of the pre-critical themes of Kant. Sir David Ross is a very interesting thinker and sort of out of bounds when it comes to English tradition. He's when it really went off on his own. He was a radical and radical individual compared to most British empiricists, and probably one of my favorite philosophers of all time. So read this. There may be a question on Sir David. Okay, 8.6, conclusion, a reconciliation project. Read that. Don't get bogged down with it. Look here for further reflection. Just think through these. I mean, it's a good thought exercise. That's something you can do. People keep asking me what our assignments are. My assignments are to read these things and think about them. I don't force you to think about them except when it comes for time for a test, but kind of think through these. Let me take a moment and leave you here for a second, dip down and take a look at my textbook here. I'm talking about the real textbook now. The cellulose and paper textbook. No, I think that's kind of it. All right. Any questions about what we've done so far? Any questions about test procedures or about the material that we've covered? You guys with me still?
Yes, sir. No questions.
Okay. People don't have any questions?
I mean,
Yes,
I guess
sir.
I have a question.
Okay.
So
Just
you
Michael?
said, just to clarify, you said after Thursday's class is when the quiz is, like we don't have to do something before. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We're going to meet what I need you to do is try to finish your reading, not necessarily finish your thinking, but finish your reading and your deep dives into these sections that I highlighted. Have that completed by Thursday, and then we'll get back together for a short session, trying to, sort out some of the problems that you might have or some of the difficulties you've had with the material. So we'll meet for a short time on Thursday. Now, I don't know if anyone who's in the class today are people that will be doing thesis papers, but people need to be talking to me pretty quickly about your project and what you're going to work on. If you're going to erase a test or 2 tests or 3 tests or whatever you're going to do. So you need to be emailing me, and we need to set up a time. I'll send you a Zoom invitation, and we can just chat for a moment or two about your project, and I can give you some helpful hints. And we can okay that project so you can start working on it. Class ends, golly wally, what, the 11th of May or something like that? So we need to be nailing that down because you've sort of got a little bit less than a month now to finish your project. So email me and give me some dates and some times that you might be available and free, that we can have 10-15-minute conversation about what you plan to do so that I can check that off and you can move on. Any questions for anyone that you might have?
I have a question about the last test.
Uh-huh.
Will it be a final exam or will it be like just a third take-home quiz?
It will just be a third take-home quiz. So it won't be comprehensive. That's the central thesis. It will not be comprehensive. It'll simply be on what we have studied since Immanuel Kant.
Okay.
And it will be a take-home. You know, the syllabus says that it will be an in-class exam, but that's going to be a actual impossibility, of course. So it will be a take-home just like the one you're going to receive Thursday evening. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, everyone understand that if you need me, email me. I respond virtually immediately. And if we need to talk, we can do a quick Zoom session. We can do one of these. You can do them with one person, or you can do them with 100 people. So, so we can arrange a time and meet in virtual space and talk to each other about, you know, what you plan to do in your project, or if you got any, you know, if you have any trouble with the material or anything I say or do, you know, we can talk about that. So that can still be done. As a matter of fact, it's probably easier for me to do that now than it was before, because us poor adjuncts don't get office space. So I can't have office hours, but now I can. So if you need me, shoot me a message. I'll answer it in a sentence or four. And if we need to meet, we can do that. Everybody cool?
I'm cool.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you.
Okay, remember, everybody stay safe, and we'll meet again on Thursday, and then I'll send you the quiz. Oh, by the way, you know, we got like 12 people here. That's about half the class. You know, I'm going to put, by the way, this meeting will be on YouTube tonight, let's say, later tonight. I am still not getting any help from IT. When I do a link through college email of any sort, whether it's Blackboard or WebAdvisor, which are the two ways that I have of emailing everyone at the same time, the link to the Zoom meeting is broken in half, and nobody can figure that out. Zoom can't figure it out. IT can't figure it out. The only way that I've been able to do this is to just, you know, download the Zoom video, make it an MP4, put it on YouTube. That's the only way that I've been able to do this so far. It's made it, you know, kind of getting around your elbow problem. It should be just easy to send this out almost immediately, but, you know, I gotta do this sort of Rube Goldberg thing of getting it to YouTube so that then you can come and get it on YouTube. But anyway, it won't be there until tonight, and I will send you out a YouTube link when it is up and running. All right, everybody stay safe. Hope your families are safe, and call me if you need me.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too.